Well, it's all over for another year. Yes, welcome along to this week's Women's Football Chat. My name is Chris Gadsby and this is the show dedicated to the third and fourth tiers of women's football here in England. That's the FA Women's National League. Coming at you this week on a Friday rather than the usual Thursday, because I thought that it would be more logical to do this week's show once we knew the result of last night's rearranged game of the rearranged game of the rearranged game between Peterborough and Leek Town, because that was an important game to decide who was relegated from the Division 1 Midlands. Didn't seem to make much sense to do the show and then not know who's going to be relegated, and then 3 hours after the show comes out, we know, and then it's out of date already. So we're doing it on a Friday instead. And of course, it could well be quite a bit of a shorter show this week because we haven't got fixtures to look at. We've only got results, and a lot of them were already decided and didn't really matter. But we're going to start with the news. Two pieces of news really this week. Firstly, we're going to go to the Northern Premier Division and Stourbridge. Stourbridge have announced Adrian Clements as their new first team manager for the 24-25 season. It says Aid brings with him a wealth of experience both on and off the pitch from his time at Leafield Athletic and more recently at Boldmere St Michael's. So good appointment for Stourbridge. The general consensus is quite positive. Interestingly, that they obviously got a manager in who has only coached, or is particularly recently coached anyway, at Tier 4 level. And this is Stourbridge this year just clung on to Tier 3 in 10th spot. So an interesting appointment there. But of course, managers with Tier 3 experience are much more difficult to come by. And we'll stick in Tier 3 because we will go to the south and Billericay Town. They put out, was this yesterday? Yesterday. And the Billericay Town and first team manager James Gibson have parted company today by mutual agreement. Chairman of the section, Greg Lake, said, "We would like to thank James for his hard work over the past 18 months. The process of identifying the new manager will commence immediately. We are seeking a manager with good experience and knowledge of the Women's National League Tier 3 or above. We are an ambitious group. Any candidates should contact Greg via his email." So, yeah, it's an interesting one there that I'm seeing. Two teams there. Both have changed their managers, both after finishing 10th in their respective leagues. Stourbridge in the Northern Premier Division, Billericay Town in the Southern Premier Division. Billericay Town 18 points, 12 points clear of the relegation zone. Stourbridge with 16 points, 7 points clear of the relegation zone. Two sides there that had, relatively close identical seasons, a couple of points in it, but relatively very similar seasons. One who have then got a manager with a lot of Tier 4 experience, one who specifically wants a manager with Tier 3 experience, perhaps gives you a little bit of an idea as to where the clubs maybe see their potential futures going. I did say on the show a couple of weeks ago, I wonder if, having got back-to-back promotions and gone from Tier 6 straight up to Tier 3, Stourbridge have maybe got themselves promoted a little bit too quickly. And, in the space of 3 years, they have gone from Tier 6 expenditure all the way up to Tier 3 expenditure and ground grading requirements and XYZ. all the extra travel involved from going from Birmingham all the way up to Newcastle and the like, and wonder if perhaps they've done it a little bit too quickly. Obviously, not through anybody's fault. The results on the pitch are the results on the pitch. But perhaps we might see Stourbridge, again down towards the bottom, maybe even closer to the relegation zone or in it next season. But for this season, they were able to survive. Let's then have a look at these final results. You'll notice, particularly when we get into Tier 4, things are a little bit different this week. I'll talk about that in a bit. So Northern Premier Division then. And the results of it. Of course, this was all already decided well before we got to the final day of the season. So the fact that Burnley lost 2-0 to Derby at Turf Moor, goals from Dulcie O'Connor in the 24th minute and Amy Sims in the 54th minute, doesn't really have much of a bearing on anything. Halifax, another good win for them, 6-1 winners over AFC Fylde. Great end to the season for Halifax. You wonder if they are able to keep that going into next season. They may well be right up there towards the end. But goals here coming to Drew Green in the 17th minute, then to Georgia Stevens in the 30th minute. Then you've got, see again, things are very different here. What they've got on full time is different to what Flash Scores have said, which is where for the third tier I take my information because it's more reliable than full time, because full time doesn't always have all of the information, like Halifax, for example, who don't have times on their system. So I'm trying to see what the difference is here. Oh no, the difference is that Halifax have just only recorded 5 of the 6 goals, which I guess means for them there was an own goal. That's not been specified either. They've just missed one off. So we've got Drew Green 17th minute, then George Stevens in the 30th, then Shauna Legg in the 48th, Courtney Willis 59th and 91st, and Meg Boydell in the 81st. AFC Fylde Lois Moore in the 62nd minute, the only goal for them. Huddersfield 3, Stourbridge 3. Goals here then for Huddersfield. Cara Fields in the 24th minute, Scarlett McMahon in the 53rd and the 58th. Stourbridge 2-1 up at half-time thanks to goals to Zoe Clark in the 27th and Neve Murphy in the 34th. Favour Omanazu in the 71st minute, getting what would prove to be the equalising goal for Stourbridge in the end. Liverpool Feds 1, Wolverhampton Wanderers 2. Wolves take the lead in this one through Tammy George in the 33rd minute. Paige Cole equalises for Feds in the 49th before Sophie Bramford, 11 minutes from time, puts Wolves back in front. Forest beating Stoke by 2-0. Holly Manders in the 14th and Natalie Johnson in the 30th. And Newcastle finished their season off with a 4-0 victory away at West Brom. Tyler Dodds 47th, Casey Elson 61st, Shana Wilkinson 76th, and Anna Salisbury 88th as they end their time in the FAWNL. Worth noting as well, both Newcastle and Portsmouth had their licenses to be championship teams accepted, so they are both going to go into the championship for next season. Let's have a look at the table. Only movement from the weekend. Derby go above Liverpool Feds after Derby beat Burnley, but everything else is the same. So Newcastle top the table ahead of Burnley, Forest, Wolves, Stoke, then Halifax, who, given where they started April down towards the bottom, to finish in 6th is great for them. Derby in 7th, Feds in 8th, West Brom 9th, Stourbridge 10th, and then Huddersfield and AFC Fylde in 11th and 12th. We expect that they will both go into the north, and we will end up then with a team from the north coming down into the Midlands. Now, the interesting thing with that is, who do you bring down from the Midlands from the north into the Midlands? If you look at the map, the most southerly based side in Division 1 North that would go into the Midlands currently, based on where they are in the country and where they're based, would be Barnsley Women, who obviously are playing out of Sheffield. But if you send Barnsley Women down to the Midlands, and it looks likely, not happened yet, that Barnsley, as in the Barnsley, not Barnsley Women, would go up into the north. If you move, you've then got a Barnsley in the north and a Barnsley in the Midlands, which just seems a bit weird. So then you're looking at Stockport County being the ones that go into the Midlands. They are the next lowest team in Division 1 North as it stands at the moment. Cheadle Town Stingers, of course, are already up. They are practically where Stockport are. Like, technically, Cheadle are further south than Stockport. So in theory, they should go into the Midlands. Interesting. And Barnsley are going to be further north than Barnsley Women unless they move ground. So it was not going to be them. So perhaps Cheadle end up in the Midlands, but that will all get decided at the AGM. Right, let's go through then into the Southern Premier Division. Again, everything already decided long before this. Cardiff City 1, Oxford United 2. Oxford 2 goals for Zoe Barrett, 6th and 81st minute. Got them the win. Ruby Scarhill with the only goal for Cardiff City. That's the last time we will hear that name as well, because of course next season Cardiff City become Gwalior United. Rugby Borough then, Angelina Nixon 6th minute, Jessica Canwell 34th and 78th, means they win 3-2 over Chatham Town, with Chatham Town's goals coming to Holly Turner in the 29th and Darcy Wells in the 40th. Hashtag United finished their season off with a 3-0 win against Cheltenham Town. And they got all their goals done very quickly at the end of the half. Jade Keogh in the 45th. Then Valentine Percy in the 45th plus 2 and Sophie Bagent in the 45th plus 4. So Cheltenham, having held them out for 45 minutes, end up going in at the break 3-0 down somehow. Ipswich Town 1, Billericay Town 0. Natasha Thomas with the only goal in that game. And then Plymouth 1, Milton Keynes Dons 2. Milton Keynes Dons don't have their goals on the system yet, but they have Creaney in the 10th minute and Gould in the 51st. Ellie Sara in the 43rd minute with the goal for Plymouth. And for Portsmouth, they win by 10 goals to 1 against London Bees. Goals in this one then: Emily Pittman in the 14th minute, Ava Roboth from 8th and 25th, Ella Humphrey 28th, Sophie Quirk 33rd and 90th, Danielle Lane 64th, Daisy McLaughlin 80th, Emma Jones 90 plus 1 and Nicole Barrett 90 plus 4. Tiana Nee Chambers the only goal for London Bees, getting that in the 61st minute. What that means for the table is that Portsmouth, of course, where nobody's moved in the south, because Portsmouth won, obviously at the top of the table. Hashtag won, who are in second. Rugby won, who are in third. Ipswich won, who are in fourth. Oxford won, who are in fifth. And MK Dons won, who are in sixth. So everybody in the top half against everybody in the bottom half, and everybody in the top half won, and everybody in the bottom half lost. So it's all exactly the same in the Southern Premier Division. Right, Division 1 Midlands results. This is where things start to get a little bit interesting, because of course 5 of the games had something on them at the weekend. So this is probably where we're going to spend the majority of our time this week. We will start with the one game that doesn't mean anything, which was Boldmere St Michael's 2, Sutton Coldfield Town 1. Goals in this one to Jade Fulmerston and Anna Wilcox, and Stephanie Kingston in the 48th minute for Sutton Coldfield Town. I noticed, and I looked this up yesterday, there were 36 games played at the weekend. When I went to go and do all the graphics yesterday, of the 36 games, only 13 of them had what I consider to be all the information on there in accordance with the rule book to avoid a fine. That means that 23 games either missed an attendance off, scorers, times on the scorers, which is all supposedly has to be put on to avoid a fine. I then went through and calculated it and worked out that the league could get about £600 in fines from this weekend if they chased everything up, which is a lot of money, and particularly because it's a relatively common occurrence. Presumably, obviously, the clubs aren't getting fined for it because otherwise they'd stop doing it. But if you've got, 20 games a week that aren't fulfilling what they're supposed to at 20 quid a pop, that's 40, and then that's 400, and then obviously if you're missing out times and an attendance, then that's a double whammy of like 40 quid. Over the course of a 9-month season, 36-week season, that's a lot of money that you could get. You're talking about 400 times 3, 1,200, add a 10 on it, 12,000, add another 6 times 4, 24, 250. You're talking about, £12,500 in fines, which obviously they're not chasing up because otherwise the clubs wouldn't do it. So what I thought I'd do, because it takes me so long when the information's not on full time, you have to go onto the club's Twitter, scroll to the game, go through the game, find out where all the goal scorers are and put them on the system, which is fine for the clubs that also put a time on. Some clubs don't put a time on, and you have to find out the graphic or the tweet that says we've kicked off and note the time, say it's 4 minutes past 2. And then you have to go to the goal and say that the goal is at 2:36, and then go, okay, they kicked off at 4 minutes past, they've scored at 36 minutes past, therefore it's in the 32nd minute. It's all right in the first half. Then in the second half, you go, the second half kicked off at 7 minutes past 3, and they have scored at 23 minutes past 3. Therefore, they have scored 16 minutes into the second half. Therefore, 16 plus 45 is 61. Okay, it's the 61st minute. And that just takes so long. So what I thought I'd do this week is, if the information isn't on full time, I've left it just to highlight quite how difficult it can be to keep up with everything and try to report accurate information when you just don't have it. And that is where we end up with, I'm trying to work it out on Twitter, and you're also there relying on the Twitter updates being regular enough. If there's a problem with the Wi-Fi and it takes 2 minutes to upload the graphic that says we've scored, you're then 2 minutes off. So I thought if I leave it, it will highlight just how much work has to go into trying to bring it accurately. And that's not looking for sympathy in any way, but just to show, so take the Boldmere St Michael's Sutton Coldfield Town game at 2-1. Boldmere don't have times on their goals, so can't do it. Milton Keynes Dons in the Southern Premier Division, I take all the Tier 3 information off flash scores because it's easier and it's always there. Milton Keynes Dons haven't put theirs on at all for this week. So, where do you go with that? Anyway, let's go through to the games that matter. Leek Town 0, Solihull Moors 5. Hat-trick for Tiana Russell-Cartwright, Riddy Rupiella and Eva Rogers with the other goals for for Solihull Moors. This was after the Peterborough League game that was meant to be last week that got through 85 minutes and then a floodlight exploded and put glass all over the pitch, so they then had to reschedule it again. And that didn't get announced until Tuesday. I think the league was secretly hoping that results would mean that that game wouldn't have to be played, but they didn't, so it did have to be played. It's at the bottom, and we'll talk about it in a bit. But we had our FAWNL Manager of the Month meeting on Tuesday, and we asked what the stress levels were like. And apparently they were okay. I'm not sure I believe it. Lincoln City 1, Loughborough Lightning 3. You know what, actually, we're going to leave that one because we're going to leave the title race till the end. So Northampton Town 4, Notts County 0. Hat-trick for Jade Bell, 20th, 59th, 63rd minute. One for Kimberly Farrow in the 50th minute. Peterborough United 1, Leafield Athletic 1. Shannon McCann-Lloyd in the 5th minute put Leafield in front, but then Zaga Lassite in the 74th minute put Peterborough back level. Let's then go to these two games which decided the Division 1 Midlands title. Sporting Cowser against Loughborough Lightning. You'll remember that Loughborough had to better Sporting's result in order to get themselves promoted. You can see there that they didn't, but let's go through the day as a whole, because Sporting Cowser took the lead inside the first minute against Sheffield, making their intentions clear, and Laura Smith put them in front after just 1 minute. Loughborough, so they were then 2 points clear of Loughborough. Loughborough put themselves ahead. Hannah Langford in the 9th minute. So 10 minutes into the game, both Loughborough and Sporting Cowser winning. And as it stands, Sporting Cowser going up on goal difference. And then back down to Sheffield, 19th minute. They equalise. Sporting Cowser are pegged back. And as it stands at the 20-minute mark, 20 past 2, it would be Loughborough Lightning 2 points ahead of Sporting Cowser, and Loughborough Lightning going up to the Northern Premier Division. They then doubled their advantage on the 44th minute. So at 2:44, it's Lincoln City 0, Loughborough Lightning 2, and Sheffield 1, Sporting Cowser 1. Looks as though it's going to be going Loughborough's way going into half time. But it doesn't, because the goal is scored by Anya Demon in the first minute of added time at the end of the first half for Sporting Cowser. Puts them back in front. They're winning 2-1, Loughborough winning 2-0. Of course, Loughborough have to better Sporting Cowser's results, so they're then relying on more goals from Sheffield. Loughborough go 3-0 in front on the 65th minute when Lydia Tilbury-Henry puts them even further in front. But it doesn't matter because they are relying on results from elsewhere. They need a goal from Sheffield. Lincoln get one back on the 79th minute for acquaintance. Which doesn't actually mean anything for Loughborough Lightning. They are still comfortably in front, but they needed a goal from Sheffield, and that goal did not come. Obviously, Sheffield throwing bodies forward. They're trying to survive as well, don't forget. They needed something from the game. And Sporting Cowser through Maja Sismoakiak in the 85th minute put them 3-1 in front. The final whistle then goes, and Sporting Cowser are the ones who go into the Northern Premier Division. On goal difference, they finish 19 goals ahead of Loughborough Lightning at the top of Division 1 Midlands. Loughborough second, Peterborough third, Bognor fourth, Northampton fifth. Only movement there, Solihull Moors above Sutton Coldfield Town, Lincoln City, Leaford Athletic, and then in the end, Notts County get themselves safe, because last night Peterborough United beat Leek Town by 5-2. 2 goals. Peterborough don't have their stuff on the system yet, but Leek Town, with goals from Chantal Gallagher in the 54th and Katie Meyer in the 100th, essentially 90 plus 10, wasn't enough for them, and Leek Town are also relegated from Division 1 Midlands. So Notts County live to fight another year in Division 1 Midlands. Division 1 North then, we'll race through these because there's only 2 games that really had anything riding on them. You'll see a lot of information is missing from here. Barnsley 3, Doncaster Rovers 2. 2 for Rosie Axton, 1 for Charlotte Stewart, enough to give Barnsley a 3-2 win. Jasmine Saxon 66th minute and Arian Parnham in the 87th minute with the goals for Doncaster. Chorley 1, Durham Sestra 1. All that information's there now. Megan Elliott in the 15th minute for Durham Sestra, and then Megan Parker in the 67th minute for Chorley. FC United Manchester relegated already, of course. Their lineup's not there. But Hull City, 2 for Helen Linsky, 2 for Ellie Tanser, 1 for Hope Knight, and 1 for Shakala Brooks gives Hull City a winning end to life in Tier 4. Chester Street Town did part of what they needed to do. They beat Leeds United by 2-0. Jenny Ashton and Katie Ellison with the goals for them. But you'll remember they had to overturn that 15-goal swing as well as win and hope York City lose. York City, though, beats Middlesbrough by 2-0. Jess Holder in the 55th minute and Ocean Rowlandson in the 82nd minute with the goals for them. Gemma Lancaster and Lily Weston with the goals for Stockport County as they win also by 2-0. It means then that the 2 teams that came up from Tier 5 go straight back down again. Chester Street Town and FC United of Manchester unable to maintain their Tier 4 status. Hull City then at the top, they finished 7 points clear of Middlesbrough, looks relatively comfortable in the end. Durham Sestra Barnsley, Stockport County above leads that movement on the final day. Doncaster Rovers Bells, Chorley, Norton Stockton Ancients and York City. Division 1 South East results then, and again this was a league that was all wrapped up. Hannah Billingham 27th minute and Ashley Hinks in the 85th gave Wimbledon a 2-1 victory over Actonians. Ashford, good win for them against Norwich City. Anya Kinane with the only goal of the game. Ashford winning that one by 1-0. Worthing finished their season off strongly, winning by 2-1 against Cambridge City. Rebecca Stevenson with the goal for Cambridge, but Worthing 12th minute to Gemma Worsfold and 1 for Shannon Albury in the 70th minute gives them all 3 points. Good point for Chesham United, a draw with Cambridge United. Isabella Simmons and Abby Smith with the goals for the home side. Natasha Smith in the 27th minute and Sasha Smith in the 68th minute with the goals for Chesham. London Seawood finished their season off with a 3-1 win against Haywards Heath Town. Anasia Harney with the only goal for the home side. Sian Harris, Ray Laudat and Elizabeth Mulvaney with the goals for London Seawood. And a thriller between Queen's Park Rangers and AFC Sudbury, who both decided that defence was optional in this game. 5-5 it finished. Joanna Blodgett, Kasha Pettit, 2 for Grace Stanley and 1 for Courtney Ward Chambers for Queen's Park Rangers. For Sudbury, a hat-trick for Jessica Allen, 1 for Leonie Besant and 1 for Yasmin Drake. In there, so Southeast table, Wimbledon of course winning the league by 7 points in the end. Norwich second, Worthing third. Ashford climbed 2 places on the final day. They finished 4th. Queen's Park Rangers 5th, Actonians 6th, both dropping a place down. Cambridge United in 7th, Seawood 8th, Chesham United 9th, Sudbury 10th, and then Cambridge City and Haywards Heath Town both relegated. Division 1 Southwest. Shall we talk about the thriller between the 2 unbeaten sides? The 2 sides that finish unbeaten, but only one can go up. Also worth mentioning, Abingdon against Keynsham. You know, that reschedulement of the reschedulement of the reschedulement. Yeah, that also got postponed because of a waterlogged pitch. So that's not been played and isn't going to get played because it's a nothing game. It doesn't matter. And even if they decide to award it to either team for a team refusing to travel or something like that, don't think it really matters. there's no prize money. Abingdon can't climb any higher if they win. Keynsham could get another couple of spots, but does it really matter? So, Bournemouth against Exeter, the big showdown for the two teams at the top. Gemma McGuinness put Bournemouth in front in the 24th minute before Zoe Cunningham, with a brilliant free kick in the 58th minute, equalises for Exeter. And that is how the game finishes. Exeter, after just missing out on promotion last year on goal difference to Cardiff City, secure promotion into the Southern Premier Division this year with a 1-1 draw with Bournemouth. It does mean both Exeter and Bournemouth go all year undefeated, and only one can go up. Keynsham Town against Bridgewater United, a 2-1 victory for Keynsham. No information on full time at all for either side. Moneyfields 3, Abingdon United 2 then. Goals in this one for Abingdon. Mimi Hodges in the 36th minute and Leah Francis in the 67th minute. For Moneyfields, Karohina Hea Taylor in the 23rd minute and Gemma Simmons in the 55th and Megan Fox in the 66th minute with the goals for them. Portsmouth Town, they win by 3-1 over Chelsea. Chelsea scoring in the 88th minute. Now, one of Portishead's goals was an own goal in the 79th minute because that is on full time, but the others aren't. So, yeah, make of that what you will. And this is what's annoying for the league as well, because how can you accurately do golden boot and golden glove and, stats like that when they're just not on the system? Must be really frustrating. It really must. Southampton women 1, Maidenhead United 2. Goals for Maidenhead, Simone O'Brien 67th minute, Isabel Stockton 92nd minute. Southampton women is losing, but we don't know how. And then Torquay United against Swindon Town. Torquay, of course, had to win. They gave it a bloody good go. Megan Jarvis in the 1st minute, Annabelle Colston in the 9th minute, Gypsy Vivation in the 13th minute. So Swindon really started strongly. Helen Diaz-Butcher in the 36th minute and Annabelle Colston in the 44th minute. So Swindon scored all theirs by half-time. Torquay United, Tracy Cross, Emily Eaton and 2 for Caitlin McCain are their goal scorers. And then the Southwest table then, so Torquay, they had to win, they didn't win, so they are relegated along with Chelsea. Of course, Exeter City are the champions of Division 1 Southwest, and they go into the Southern Premier Division for next season. So that is the end of the FAWNL for this year. We are still waiting for 3 of the teams to come up from Tier 5. They are from the West Midlands, the North East and the London and South East area. I'm estimating that North East will be decided because there are 2 games being played, one this weekend, one Wednesday. The North East will be decided by next week's show. West Midlands and London and South East won't be decided until the 19th, which will be the show afterwards. And then we will know who's in the FAWNL next year and can have a pretty good idea of the league makeup for next year. But of course, then we've got to look at the AGM and see what lateral movement there's going to be. Right, let's go through questions then for this week's show, just to finish it off. I had an interesting one through earlier on this week, and it was from Casimir O'Toole, who said, I think there needs to be a discussion whether Lincoln City women need a change in management. Finishes of 3rd, 6th and this season 8th shows which direction the club is headed. What makes it worse is if we had the points we had this season, last season, we would have been relegated. Add the County Cup to that, where it's been winners, runners-up and then semi-finals, all 3 games against Lincoln United, who of course are coming up next year. It's not a great read at all. So, yeah, clearly Lincoln have been going backwards in recent years. in terms of a change of management, that all decides on what direction the board want to take things in. And the reason I say that is there are some teams within the FAWNL who are perfectly happy being in Tier 4. And therefore, and some teams in Tier 3 that are happy being in Tier 3. Therefore, if the board of Lincoln City Women don't have the desire to be in Tier 3 with all the extra expenses that come with that, I don't know what the state off the top of my head that Lincoln's ground is, if it would meet Tier 3 or not. Are you then, if you are a board who is happy with being in Tier 4, does it matter to you if you finish 2nd or 10th? Now, yes, it will to the players and yes, it will to the fans. Don't get me wrong with that. But if ultimately all you want is a Tier 4 women's football side and you aren't really a board or an organisation as in Lincoln City as a whole that want to put a lot of money into this, are you bothered where you finish in Tier 4 and if you win the County Cup or what have you, as long as you do finish in Tier 4? Totally get what you're saying as a fan. And if I was a fan of Lincoln City and saw that, well, we were 3rd, then we were 6th, then we're 8th, and then we got the final, so we've got the winners, then the runners-up, and then we lost in the semi-finals. We've been going down for 3 years, why aren't we making a change? I just wonder if that's why, because the board are fine with a Tier 4 team, and therefore as long as the team remains in Tier 4, that's absolutely fine. That would be my thinking around that. And then we went on to another question. This one coming in from Mark Lancaster, of course, is a regular with his questions. He says, now the season's finished, who do you think were team of the year, most improved team, and which team fell below expectations? I would say hashtag, obviously he's with hashtag, so it's a bit biased. Most improved, Halifax or Middlesbrough. One from Wolves, Forest, Huddersfield, Ipswich, Oxford. Most teams in Tier 4, pretty much where they were last year. Shout out to Abingdon and Worthing. Yeah, so I was thinking about this earlier. I think you do have to look at hashtag as having a tremendous season. You've got to look at Worthing as well, having a tremendous season. I think the thing that suited hashtag quite a bit was they've obviously got a great footballing side there, no question. But also, I think because they played, particularly first time round, all the big teams, I think the big teams took them for granted in the first few weeks. And they thought, newly promoted team, will waltz in, we'll win 3 or 4-0, we'll waltz out again. And that didn't happen. They ended up getting stung. So, I do think that had an impact, so slightly. You look at, they were still able to beat, a couple of the teams twice. Bit like, Ipswich beat them second time round, Portsmouth beat them second time round. So I do think there's a slight element of that. Elsewhere in Tier 3, I think in terms of most improved, Halifax had a good year, yes, but had it not been for the great end of the season that they've had, they would have been much further down there. And also, if you compare them to Brighouse Town as they were last year, this year Halifax 6th, 31 points. Last year, Brighouse 5th, 31 points. So in terms of actually season to season, it's been exactly the same. But going into Tier 4, in terms of most improved, there are teams in. Abingdon have had a great season. Don't get me wrong. Worthing have had a superb season in South East. Middlesbrough, of course, they got all that extra investment. They've gone from 10th up to 2nd. You've got to look at that as well. And then in the Midlands, kind of teams kind of doing as you would have expected, really, in the Midlands. So there's plenty of teams that you can put in there. Um, Middlesbrough have done very well, given the investment that they got. Other teams are in and around, really. Um, so yeah, and in terms of teams that fell below expectations, I think Doncaster definitely did. They really struggled. We've already spoken about Lincoln there. Um, but yeah, it's an interesting one. I think the teams that I expected to be towards the top have on the whole been at the top. Um, I think there are teams that have fallen below where they would have liked, certainly. Even in tier three, you look at Oxford and what have you that would perhaps have been lower than where they would have liked, finishing in fifth. But I mean, on the whole, I don't think there were too many that massively underachieved. As I said, Doncaster is one for me, that finished a lot lower than I was expecting because, of course, they only just missed out to Stourbridge last year in the Midlands, move up into the north and really struggled. So it is an interesting question. Uh, Let me know in the comments on YouTube or X or whatever that who you thought were the over and underachievers in the FAWNL. And finally, from Nolly, who is a Forest fan, who do you predict to invest heavily in their FAWNL teams this summer? Okay, so primarily this is going to be around tier three and teams trying to get up. I am almost certain that Forest are going to be one of them. It's been announced this week they've released 6 players at the end of their contracts. These were 6 players with an awful lot of experience with Forest. Players such as May Moncaster, who won the plate with the club, won the cup with the club, very nearly got promoted last year. Neve Reynolds in there as well. Asia Aguirre, who's been there for 8 years. Players who have a lot of experience and a lot of history with the club have gone. And that to me says that they couldn't commit to where the club is going. And by that I mean it sounds as though the club are looking to either go even more heavily semi-pro hybrid model or go fully professional, and they need players that can afford to go fully professional. The flip side of that, of course, I know that the players have other careers outside of it, and these careers are much longer than a career in women's football. And this isn't the men's game where you can play, if you wanted to, you can play your career in football at a decent level, earning so many £1,000s a week, and then not do anything else after you retire. This is women's football don't have the wages of that level. When you finish playing, you've got to go and do something else. And I think some players are making that decision that they want to go down the career route rather than the football route. So Forest are one. It seems to me they are sowing the seed to go fully professional and try to copy Newcastle. Other teams, I suspect that I think Derby have got to put in more than they are doing. They had a very disappointing season, finishing down in 7th. And so the top 4 of the Northern Prem were the top 4 in the Northern Prem. Newcastle have gone. They're not getting now a championship team down. You've got to look at Burnley, Forest and Wolves. Wolves have done really well without the investment over the past few years. You feel if they get the investment, and it is a big if, you've got to listen to the Wolves Women podcast for that one. But if they do get the investment, that's quite scary for everybody else because they're there or thereabouts without it. If they then get it, it becomes quite scary. Stoke could put more money in as well in tier 3. I think there's going to be less in tier 4 because the jump from tier 4 to tier 3 seems to, as a general rule, happen a little bit more organically than pouring a load of money in and making your way up that way. In terms of the Southern Premier Division, I mean, Rugby are going to move into the Midlands. Ipswich and Oxford need to do a bit if they're going to, challenge towards the top. They finished 8 points away from #United this year. The concern for #United is you don't want to get promoted too quickly if you haven't got all that funding and infrastructure and support behind. Another one is Cardiff City, who are going to become Gwalior United. They have obviously this big new investment that came in this year towards the back end of the year. They've got the new sponsor as well. So I do think you've got to look at Cardiff next year. In terms of Tier 4, don't think the likes of Bournemouth are going to do anything because they'll feel like they can do it again next year and probably get their way up. Nothing is jumping out at me in the Midlands, perhaps Peterborough, but nothing's really jumping out. Middlesbrough, expect them to be up there again. Durham Cestra probably won't because, of course, they are pretty much that farm team for Durham. Barnsley will be interesting to see where they go, but I suspect they probably won't because obviously that's like Barnsley Women, you've got Barnsley FC coming in. So that's an interesting one from Division 1 North. South East, I mean, Norwich, again, they'll feel like they could probably do something next year. They'll look at the teams coming down and maybe not be too worried about that. Worthing have had a great year. They might feel they can go up again. But obviously there's a lot of independents in South East. And then South West, I expect it, I think, to be very kind of similar. Again, there's a lot of independents. Look at Bournemouth, I think will fancy their chances next year. It'd be interesting to see who goes from east to west. Moneyfields will very much fancy themselves as well. Swindon, the other team in there, and then again you've got, Abingdon will look to consolidate. I think Bridgewater are probably happy where they are, as are Keynsham, Maidenhead, Portishead. So I don't think you'll see a lot in Tier 4. I think Tier 3, the investment is going to come from the likes of Forest, maybe a Burnley, where they are trying to push into the second tier. But yes, thank you so much for your questions this week. Keep them coming because next week is very much just an overriding wrap-up sort of episode. We've got the FAWNL Awards are coming on Sunday as well at Wembley at the Women's FA Cup final. So next week we'll know all of the award winners, manager of the season, everything like that. So there's plenty more to come. So then that's the plan for next week on the 16th. Then come the 19th, we should know all the teams in the FAWNL for next year. We'll then be able to go through for the 23rd and look through what the leagues will probably look like next year while we wait for the AGM. And then the 30th, the end of May, will be the start of the Women's Summer Knockout Tournament. The balls are all ready. They are in the box there. They're all ready to go. And the summer knockout will be starting towards the end of this month. But that'll do it for this week's episode of the Women's Football Chat. As the season comes to a close, the whiteboard is empty and we await to fill it up at the start of next season. But thank you so much for watching and or listening to this week's episode of the Women's Football Chat, and of course your support throughout this season as well. I'll be back next Thursday at 6 p.m. as we completely round off the FAWNL for 23-24.